Hi, Jeremy here, Damn Good Doctors Club. Today we're going to talk about clinical confusion, which is the opposite of clinical clarity. And this is a situation that comes about, no matter where you are in your career, it can come get you. And basically, if you see any kind of complex cases or even simple cases, straightforward cases, but you're dealing with natural systems and humans, they can always be more complex than they appear under the surface. I think we know this with any level of experience. We start to learn that even simple cases have a lot of complexity. So whether you're dealing with outwardly complex cases like fibromyalgia, Lyme disease, mold exposure, that kind of thing, autoimmune, or you're going after something that's more straightforward like indigestion or insomnia, there's still a lot of complexity to navigate. And so you want to have very clear thought processes so that you can avoid this muddied confusion. And I'm going to teach you something I learned back in former life when I was an art student. And I used to, do fine art painting and stuff. You can see some evidence of that on the wall behind me. And every now and then I go on a tear and I'll get some canvases and just kind of go on an art spree. But for the most part, right, with kids and practice and mentoring, there's not a ton of time to paint pictures. Yet, I have some great lessons that I want to share with you because when we look at cross disciplines, we can oftentimes get valuable insights that we wouldn't have come up with otherwise. If this kind of video is helpful for you, this is YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell, do the like, do all the YouTube stuff. Why would you do that? Well, not only for my channel helping me, but really it helps us. It helps us train the algorithm. It helps you take control over the YouTube algorithm so that YouTube shows you stuff that you care about instead of the other way around, the algorithm controlling you. It's really important. You got to interact with these things so that you can not be manipulated and subjected to whatever the algorithm wants to show you, right? Without getting too paranoid here. And if these kinds of conversations are really helpful, you might consider joining our group, Damn Good Doctors Club. We've got a secure chat group. We go into all these topics in great depth. We continue these themes, and it's something where you can be in there asking me anything you want. There's great people. You can meet some really stellar colleagues, and I'm sure if you look around, you'll find a link somewhere where you can find your way to the group. There might be a bit of a wait, but I'll get you in as soon as I can. So one of the things when I was in art school that kind of jammed me up was mixing colors. Now, I have a little bit of a predisposition to trouble with mixing colors because I'm a little bit colorblind, color deficient. And I'll never forget being a kid at the doctor's office, and they showed me those little tests with all the different color dots, and they said, okay, what letter do you see in this shape? Or can you trace a path from here to here? And I looked at them and I said, you guys are crazy. There's no letter, there's no path. And they said, you're colorblind. And of course, as a young version of myself, I just stood there and said, well, you're obviously wrong. This test is wrong. There's no way I'm colorblind. So I had to argue with the doctors until, my mother, my sister, my dad, everybody could trace the same line. And I realized that I was the only one that couldn't see it, right? So sometimes it takes a little bit to get some introspection, right? Sometimes we don't believe other people's perspectives, that's a whole other story for a whole other video, which also is a very valuable lesson in terms of how we can help people help themselves. So step one is admit you've got a problem. Like, hey, I'm colorblind a little bit, right? And now my wife, can tease me about how I dress myself. And I say, well, I'm colorblind, of course. So it's just better if you pick out the clothes, right? That's a secondary gain. Anyway, back to clinical clarity. Okay, this is really important. I know I'm making this kind of fun and lighthearted, but really the ultimate effects of this is that you're not going to be wasting people's time. You're not going to be wasting their money. You're not going to be, even most importantly, you're not going to be wasting their hope. Because every time we try and fail, there's a little bit of a hope debt that comes out. So people, especially if you're working with people with complex chronic conditions or anybody that's had anything significant or serious for a long time, their mojo might be kind of low. So you've got to have, it's like, that's your duty as a physician, is to have your systems lined up so that you're not wasting people's mojo, kind of throwing them all over the place with the shots in the dark and kind of getting their hopes up with every silver bullet and trying to do everything at once and just see what sticks. Because every time you fail, they get a little more discouraged. And that's, it's not our fault as physicians, but what I am going to say is once I decided this and recognized this and I realized we could do better, I've started to apply my efforts that way. And I would encourage you to do the same thing. And what do I mean by we can do better? I mean creating systems of clinical clarity This is something, I'm not going to go through every single thing here in this video. It's impossible. This is hours and hours and hours of deep training. We have this. This is, a privilege for people that work with us. But the general idea is that you start to tidy up your clinical thinking so that you're not making all kinds of mistakes, you're not setting the wrong expectations, and that you're aligned to the reality of helping your patient as they adapt and change through their journey of getting their wellness back, getting their health back. So you have to create context and create conditions to help people understand the frame around your work, because they'll come in with whatever expectations they were given from whoever they saw last. And that person, whoever they saw last, might not have done a great job, which is why they're here to see you. So there's a lot you have to do to kind of assert your worldview and your processes out in the open so that the patients aren't confused about what it is we're doing here and why your recommendations are what they are. And if something doesn't go right, do you have systems in place so that you can understand and interpret failures and actually collect data from it so that you know what the next move should be for your patient? I mean, this is serious. This is one of those things where it's like being a really good driver. Everybody's like, yeah, I'm a really good driver, of course. And that's statistically impossible that, 90% of people are better than average drivers or something like that, whatever the number is. You've seen those little surveys. And it's the same thing with clinical clarity. Yeah, I'm very clear on it. Well, okay. But how? How does that work? We have to be, just like I had to be willing to go, okay, I guess I'm colorblind. All right, I guess I see it. We have to be willing to look at evidence and go, okay, I've seen some complicated cases and things didn't go the way that I thought they would. And then we have to look at that, the absence of evidence, meaning when people disappear, they ghost you, they stop calling you back, they drop out of care, they cancel their next appointment. Oh yeah, I'll get back to you. And they never do. They're giving you feedback that you have to be able to interpret that. You have to go, okay, why? And sometimes it can be hard because, every now and then there is an outlier case where somebody disappears from treatment for some crazy reason. Maybe they had to relocate for their job or something like at the last minute and they just forgot to tell you. Or people disappear from care because they're so much better, but they also don't tell you that. So you're left not knowing. It's really good to have systems around figuring out why people leave. But most often people leave because they're not getting the results that they want or that they expect. So one of our jobs is to develop clinical clarity, which is an ongoing practice. It's an ongoing process. It never ends. You can get some major wins by doing like the bulk of the work of lining up your thinking, whatever your skill set is. I'm trained in Chinese herbal medicine. That's how I think more of an Eastern medicine lens. Primarily because that's my training, that's my skill set. I've been doing this a long time, and that's how my brain works. But it doesn't matter if you do Chinese herbs or if you're doing naturopath, if you're functional medicine, if you're a DO, if you're an MD. It doesn't matter what your actual tools are. It's how you arrange them and how you create a process for your patients to go through so that they can get from where they are suffering to where they want to be, their ideal future, their hopes. You want to help them achieve that. That's our job. That's how we deliver value. That's how we deliver transformation. I mean, that's like our purpose. That's why we're here on the planet, is to do this work, which doesn't mean doing kind of a decent job for a minute until the patient gives up on us and tries somebody else. Now, it's bound to happen in some cases. It's never 100%. There's always going to be people that you can't help and you try and all that. But what you want to know so that you can sleep well at night and so that you can look at your new patients in the eyes with confidence and integrity and say, here's the plan, and know that you have a real plan, a real strategy. And how this breaks down, why am I talking about art school and all this and being colorblind? Well, because I had a hard time mixing colors. And there are people that are really good at this. I mean, there are people that are insanely good at mixing colors. And painting, there's a lot of skill sets in painting. You've got to figure out the color scheme you want to do. You've got to figure out the general form, the kind of energy of the piece. You got to figure out the harmony. You got to figure out the composition and the arrangement and what all the elements are like, what kinds of textures you're going to have. But another one's color. And that thing was like, that was my roadblock, mixing color, right? I still like to do it, but you can see I painted, whites and browns. I'm safe. I'm good. Just like how I dress myself, right? I can't make a lot of mistakes that way. I've created rules and systems so that I don't have to be a genius all the time. I create some parameters so that I can be free to make some mistakes, but they won't be huge mistakes. I'll let you think about the implications of that in terms of your clinical practice and your skill set. But when I got to art school, one of the things that I learned and was exposed to, and if you have a background in art, you might be familiar with this, or maybe you've heard me talk about it. This is one of my favorite things to talk to practitioners about, especially when it comes to clinical clarity and getting your systems tightened up around how you're going to handle complex patients, is this idea of freshman brown. Now, what is freshman brown? Well, what often happens with new art students is that they get a canvas and they think, okay, I want to do this painting, right? And they start adding some colors and mixing some colors in, and they think, yeah, I'll put a little bit of blue in here, and I'm going to have some red, and then, yeah, I want to put some orange and some yellow. And they just kind of keep adding stuff. And it's this more is better mentality that gets in their head because they haven't been yet trained. They haven't been cultivated. And it's a mistake that a lot of people make earlier in their journey as artists, is to start kind of adding a little bit of everything. And what winds up happening when you start adding color, and then you start mixing it up, it turns into this brown because there's no differentiation. It turns into this brown it's not a nice brown. Okay, it's like a poop brown. It's freshman brown is not a compliment. So that's what they call it. They look at that, it looks like vomit or, feces, and it's just not a nice looking color. And you mix all the paints and you look at that and you go, oh, how did that happen? I had the best intentions and I used all the right stuff. And then somebody a little more seasoned can come over and go, oof, nice pile of freshman brown. You better start again. What are you going to do with that, right? What you want to take away from this is take a look at treatment plans. Take a look at supplement stacks. Take a look at herbs. Take a look at whatever it is you're interfacing with your patient base. And take a look at that and go, is this a pile of freshman brown? Is this an undifferentiated mass? Am I trying to do everything at once? Am I trying to add every single color at once? And I know this is hard, especially if you do lab tests. And this, I know I'm going to say something controversial here, but lab tests are really important. It's important to have quantitative understandings of what's going on. And hear me now, relax, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And one of the problems of lab tests is that a lot of times people don't understand the limits of that kind of thinking. They're excellent for confirmation. But you have to understand the limitations around lab tests. If you're taking a snapshot of moving targets, dynamic levels that change throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the year, and you think that snapshot gives you the whole picture, and then you act on that in an insane way, trying to correct everything that's low, make it high, everything that's high, make it low, and you send the person home with 10,000 bottles of stuff to take, you got a freshman brown problem. All right? Now, I know sometimes people need more than one thing, and that's okay. That's totally okay. The idea here, what I want to convey in this idea here is just like painting. You can get every color onto a canvas. You absolutely can. But if you want to do it in a nice way and have a good piece of art come out of it, is you have to be patient and deliberate, and you have to have steps and a plan and order. So you don't want to mix everything all at once while the paint's all wet, right? And then smear freshman brown all over this thing, because anybody will see it. Lay people will see it and they'll go, huh, yeah, right? And people in the art world will look, anybody with experience, and they'll say, oh, you don't know how to mix colors, right? Which I'm guilty of, okay? I'm never gonna, talk down to anybody. These are mistakes I've made too. And clinically as well, sending somebody home well-intentioned, going, okay, well, you're gonna need this, and this. And we need to start it all right away because this is a really big problem. So go. And the person's excited because they're off to a new start, but they've got their big bag. You know what I found is actually a lot better. If you want to do the big bag of supplements or herbs that really encompasses everything, have stages so that they know that, yeah, they've got the big bag, but some of this, the majority of this stuff is not appropriate right now. It's not time yet. And that actually they only need to focus on these one or two things out of the bag. And then as their situation changes, now they can start to evolve to the next level and the next level of what they're putting in their body, whether it's supplements, vitamins, enzymes, Chinese herbs, Ayurvedic herbs, homeopathy, whatever it is. Don't send the person home with freshman brown. And why is this so important? Well, I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to come back to this, is the hope, the failure in hope. It's a fine balance. And while we may have clinical understanding of, yes, the lab test says this, or yes, my training says they need this, 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 and this, you want to give people early wins so that they're not taking a ton of stuff and not knowing what's doing what. So if you can pick a couple things, the most significant things, and save the rest for just a little later, that's going to help so much. And when something doesn't go right, then we know, oh, it was one of these two things or one of these three things. It wasn't like, okay, well, which of the 20 supplements did it, or something canceling something out? Because now we've got these networks where everything's possibly affecting everything else. This is one facet of so many things that we look at with clinical clarity, so that you've got systems lined up like a pro, so that when patients come in to see you and they have these kinds of questions, or they have bad reactions or no reaction, no response, or they're healing, but it's like, I wonder if we could actually get faster progress by tweaking this and this variable. All these things need to be in your head like an algorithm, basically. And algorithms are mechanical and, terrifying, because we see AI and things like that going to take over the world. But you can think like an algorithm too. In fact, it might be a lot easier than you imagine. It's a matter of really mapping out and getting clear and on your thoughts, and knowing that you can grow and expand your schema or your framework of how you're thinking over time with experience, which is important. You want to learn and grow. So sending somebody home with a whole trick or treat bag full of supplements and all this stuff, which, even if it's justified based on their snapshot lab report or whatever you learned from your diagnostics and your training, even if it's all justified, I would invite you to think about organizing it in a way that makes sense and feels right for the patient, so that they can take small chunks of your treatment plan. Just like when you mix paint, maybe only use a couple colors at once. Get something dialed in that has its own identity, that has its own tone. Get that on the canvas, right? See how it dries. Get some feedback, and then figure out what your next color is going to be, what your next move is going to be, to bring some harmony to the picture. I hope that helps you get some sense of clinical clarity. You don't want to make the freshman Brown mistakes. If this video was helpful to you, jump in our group. We're talking about this stuff every day, so you want to be there. You can find the link, I'm sure, and as soon as I can, I'll let you get in there. This has been Damn Good Doctors Club, Freshman Brown. Okay, don't make a mess of your patients. Try to keep it clean and nice. They will appreciate it, and they will come back, and they will refer their friends, because they know that you take good care and you think ahead. All right, get to work.